2018. The presidency said it is due to the participation of President Muhammadu Buhari and a significant number of ministers at the high-level meeting of the International Conference on Lake Chad Basin at the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja. The Senate is on the verge of passing the National Transport Commission bill, which is now in its final stage into law. During the course-by-course consideration, Chairman Senate Committee on Land Transport, Olugbenga Ashafa, said when the bill is eventually passed into law, it will establish a multimodal transport regulator which will modify all the transport sector. The House, however, seemed not to agree on Clause 7, which centers on appointment of 9 executive and non-executive members.
The objectives of the bill are to 1. Establish the National Transport Commission as an effective, impartial, and independent regulatory authority in the transport sector and to set out the objectives, functions, and powers of the Commission. 2. Promote the implementation of the National Transport Policy. 3. Provide an economic regulatory framework for the transport sector or regulated transport industry. 4. Provide mechanism for monitoring compliance of government agencies and transport operators in the regulated transport industry with relevant legislation and advise government on matters relating to economic regulation of regulated transport industry.
Senate leader Ahmed Lawal, however, raised a motion to step down the bill for more deliberations.
And move the motion that we stand down the consideration of this report, that these technical issues that have been observed here, let the committee deal with it before Thursday next week. And Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Business and Rules to schedule this for Thursday. If that will be the only report that we could take, let's take it and complete it within the same day. So I move that we...
In his ruling, Senate Deputy President A.K. Ekirimadu, after putting the bill into voice vote, stepped down the bill for more legislative inputs. And away from this, the Lagos State Governor, Akinwumi Ambode, has signed the 2018 appropriation bill into law with a total budget size of 1,461,108,1,680 trillion naira. The governor's chief press secretary, Habib Aruna, who disclosed this, said the governor assented to the bill today in his office at the Lagos House, Ikeja. Governor Ambode also signed 2 bills into law, which are the Consolidated Transport Sector Bill and the Lagos State Teaching Service Commission Bill. The Transport Sector Bill, Sector Law 2018, provides for the development and management of a sustainable transport system in the state, as well as development, management and maintenance of transport infrastructure and facilities within the state. In security matters, the Air Force has begun a 2-week medical outreach for internally displaced persons, IDPs, in Maiduguri and Damboa in Borno State. A Director of Public Relations and Information, Air Vice Marshal Olatukumbo Adesoya, said the medical intervention is aimed at alleviating the medical needs of IDPs in Maiduguri and Damboa and would also address the health challenges of IDPs. A report says since the exercise started on February 13, the team has conducted 71 eye surgeries and 31 general surgeries at Damboa, while 32 eye operations and 10 general surgeries have been conducted in Damboa. The state government says Government Girls Science and Technology College in Dapchi, Yobe State, where 110 girls are missing after Boko Haram attack, will remain closed, calling for tighter security. The State Commissioner of Education, Mohammed Lamin, who disclosed this to journalists, said the authorities shut the school for a week pending a head count of returning students, but as dozens of girls failed to reappear. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Air Force now has deployed more assets in a day and night search for the 110 schoolgirls abducted last week by suspected Boko Haram men. The Rivers State Police Command has paraded one pastor, Chidebere Okorafor, for killing 3 persons. The suspect, who is the pastor of Altar Solution Church in Afam Oyibo local government area of Rivers State, had allegedly killed one Ada Kosilia Ezeawa, Christabel Joseph, Uluoma Owiagba, and an unborn child. The report.
Speaking to journalists at the police headquarters in Rivers State, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Finance and Administration, Cypriel Okoro, said the command began investigation into the alleged killings on December 11, 2017, when the victim's family reported the case of their disappearance to the police. The DCP also revealed that the pastor is said to have been in an amorous relationship with one of the deceased, Uloma Onweagba.
The pastor confessed to the commission of the said murder of all the deceased persons. Dwelling on the trust the deceased person had on him, he manipulated the 2 women on the said date of murder by first luring Ada Consilia Ezawa to an uncompleted building, while telling the other deceased person to wait 3 poles away that he was coming to join her. She was suffocated with the wrapper she used in strapping the baby on her back. The baby was equally discovered dead. The suspect, in confirmation to his earlier confessional statements, took the detectives to the various scenes and reconstructed the act of how he snuffed lives out of his victims. Autopsy has been carried out on all the corpses, confirming the cause of death.
The accused pastor, Chidebere Okorafor, admitted to the crime, but pleaded for forgiveness from the families of the deceased.
I'm sorry for the killing the deaths of these people, and I want to be forgiven because it did not happen intentionally. I want the families to have mercy. Family of Oloma and the family of Mr. Joseph.
The families of the deceased had called for justice to be served over the death of their loved ones when the suspect was arrested at Oyibo Divisional Police Headquarters.
Former Chief of Army Staff General Kenneth Minima, retired, has refunded about 1.7 billion naira to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. The refund followed investigation by the Anti-Graft Agency on the report and recommendations of the Presidential Committee on Audit of Defense Equipment Procurement. CADEP had uncovered irregularities in the procurement and award of contracts in the Army and suspicious transactions in the accounts of the Defense Industry Corporation of Nigeria, DICON, during General Minima's tenure. The Supreme Court has ordered the Federal Judicial Service Commission, FJSC, to reinstate Bode Thomas, who was compulsorily retired as the Chief Registrar of the Court of Appeal in 2009. A 5-man panel of the Supreme Court, in a judgment on February 16, 2018, ordered that Thomas be reinstated to his post as the Chief Registrar of the Court of Appeal with effect from the date of his compulsory retirement on March 5, 2009. Thomas was compulsorily retired on March 5, 2009 after the FJSC accepted the report of its investigative committee, which examined allegations of serious misconduct raised against him in a complaint by the then President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Umar Abdullahi, retired. Justice Kumai Akas faulted the process leading to the FGSC's decision to compulsorily retire Bode Thomas. The People's Democratic Party, PDP, has declared that the All Progressives Congress, APC, would not exist in the Southeast beyond 2019 general elections. The opposition party disclosed this during the inauguration of PDP Youth Alliance Southeast Zone in Enugu. The national coordinator of the PDP Youth Alliance, Charles Omini, who inaugurated the body, said the party would reclaim all elected positions in the Southeast during the forthcoming elections. Omini said that APC is already campaigning for the PDP through bad governance by President Muhammadu Buhari-led federal government. You're still watching Super Screen News at 6. We'll take a short break here, and when we return, we'll bring you business news. Stay with us. Well, it's so glad to have you back. The federal government and the World Bank are in final stage of negotiation for the release of $1 billion performance-based loan for Nigeria's Power Sector Recovery Program, PSRP. The loan is currently being prepared for final approval based on the recent findings on the PSRP by the World Bank Group and the federal government's progress on implementation on the program. The PSRP is a series of policy actions, governance and financial interventions to be implemented by the federal government over the next 5 years. Its target is to restore the financial viability of the power sector, improve transparency in service delivery, resolve consumer complaints, reduce losses and energy theft, and reset the Nigerian electricity supply industry for future growth. The House of Representatives has faulted the no-case submission made by the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, to President Muhammadu Buhari on the lingering oil prospecting license to 145 deal, otherwise known as Malabu Oil Deal. About $1.1 billion share of the federal government in the controversial sale was said to have been diverted by officials who handled the transactions. The senior officials who were frequently mentioned in the case include a former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Diazani Alice Maduke, and a former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Mohammed Adoke, who served in the administration of former President Goodluck Jonathan. Malami, in a recent letter to President Buhari, sought to withdraw any case against the former officials on the grounds that there were no evidences to initiate a successful prosecution. Reacting to the AGF's position, the House of Representatives vowed to carry out its own investigations to a logical conclusion. As part of its contribution to government's commencement of review of the Environmental Impact Assessment Act 1992 and other environmental guidelines, some stakeholders in Rivers State have organized a dialogue to have an input on the issue. At the meeting in Port Harcourt, the state capital, the experts expressed belief that the review will address issues concerning the Ogoni clean-up process and articulate the views of stakeholders on how best the Environmental Impact Assessment Act 1992, being reviewed by the National Assembly, can be expanded to cover social, health rights, and gender impact components.
There has to be massive awareness. Environmental awareness in the country is still abysmally low. For our country, Nigeria, I will strongly advocate the National Assembly leadership on environment. And they're bringing in experts to educate them and train them sincerely on the way forward, to include the human right impact assessment, which we are advocating today, to be included in things like the EIA or to be done independently, so that they will create a leverage for boxing to the corner the IOCs when they say that certain environmental things are classified and nothing can be done about it.
It's to look at strengthening the existing framework in terms of our laws. For instance, the Environmental Impact Assessment Act of 1992 that's currently under review, to say what are the things that have happened since that law was enacted in 1992 to date. What are the new developments, global best practices, leading practices in other parts of the world that we can put in place to further strengthen our governance regime in this area. Between the time that this EIA Act, the current one we have in place, was enacted and today, a number of developments have happened even on the international stage. For instance, the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights has been adopted by a number of countries, including Nigeria. How much of that and its elements have been infused into our laws on environmental governance?
It is necessary because, I agree that we are, there is impact assessment for the environment, but whatever you are doing in the environment also affects the human being. It also affects the different strata in society. And so it is important, because without that, the hostilities we are talking about, all of these issues of disease burden, they are not going to be attended to. The essence of today's gathering is to articulate civil society position so that the current EIA, the way we have it, can be expanded to include issues of human rights, social impact, and gender assessment.
Well, some environmentalists bearing their mind on the Environmental Impact Assessment Act 1992 there. Well, you're still watching Super Screen News at 6. We'll take a short break here to return with more news. Stay with us.